Hi guys, and welcome back to another video. Darker days are coming, so today we're going to discuss some of my favorite historical movies and dramas that you can watch in the evenings with a cozy cup of cocoa. So let's get right into it. I've grouped these by historical era, so starting with the earliest dramas that are set in like 600 AD all the way up to World War II. So let's get started with something a little bit unexpected, Chinese costume dramas. And once you've watched one, you're gonna want to watch them all. Trust me. So, these are up first in my list because most of them are set in a historical period that is quite far back, and the costumes are just so gorgeous. I mean, I'm no expert on Chinese fashion, but from what I can see, these costumes are pretty accurate as far as I can see, but obviously the creators did take some creative liberties, modernizing certain parts of it. But there's just something about the Hanfu fashions that... amazing. So let's start off with the first drama, and that is The Legend of the Phoenix. Now, since this is more of a fantasy drama, I can't quite tell where in the historical timeline that would fit. My guess is that it's set in around the 6th century, and probably along the lines of the Northern Wei dynasty. Anyway, I can't really tell, but the costumes are just amazing. So this series is all about a young circus performer who goes to the Emperor's court to perform for the Queen Mother's birthday, the Empress Dowager, and something goes horribly wrong that they're basically set up by, and she becomes a pawn in a dangerous struggle for power. All goes well for the time being, and later they fall in love with each other basically. But later, for some reason, I don't quite remember why, this young circus performer enters the palace again as a maid, and she invariably becomes involved in the power struggle again. Now, the emperor falls for her, she's made into a concubine, but she's still in love with this general, and she works together with him against the enemies of the kingdom. The general on the battlefield, and she herself inside the palace, pulling strings from behind the scenes, so to speak. So it's a very dramatic storyline. Sticking with Chinese costume dramas for a little while longer, the second drama I recommend from that genre is called Wrong Carriage, Right Groom, and this plays a little bit later, to my understanding. This is also a fantasy drama, but set in the 8th century or thereabouts, maybe around 1000 AD. Again, I'm not quite sure, but here you see, my guess would be that this is set somewhere in the Tang Dynasty or maybe a little bit later. So again, beautiful costumes, a little bit of kung fu, and and this story is all about two girls who get married on the same day, but they are surprised by some rebels. They take refuge in the same temple, and then once the danger is past, they get on in the wrong bridal procession by mistake, and they're married off to each other's grooms. And in the end, both couples fall in love, all is good, but especially the beginning episodes are quite chaotic, as both girls wonder how the other one is doing, and both men don't know that they've been married to the wrong girl. Started watching this series, but so far it's really good. Now up next, and here's where we get into some actual historical context as well, is Empresses in the Palace. We're still in the Chinese category because all of my earlier dramas just happen to be Chinese. So bear with me a little while longer. I promise we come to some Western dramas as well after this. So the next Chinese TV series that you might want to watch is Empresses in the Palace. And this one's actually inspired by historical events in the Qing dynasty, which is in the 18th century. A new emperor ascends to the throne, he picks out his concubines from the nobility of the land, and they all get involved in the struggle for power in the imperial court. Again, there's lots of treachery, backstabbing, the women fight among themselves, not openly but using dirty little tricks like poison and murder. Using dirty tricks like poisoning and blackmailing and framing each other all the time. And then there's this young innocent girl who comes into the imperial family, and she just has to survive and protect herself from all of the other women trying to bring her down. She eventually becomes the emperor's favorite, and now Empresses in the Palace is quite different from the earlier dramas in terms of fashion, since in the earlier dramas that I've described so far, we've seen Hanfu style clothing, Hanfu meaning literally the clothing of the Han people, which is the largest ethnic group in China. But once we come to the Qing dynasty, actually the Manchu people are ruling the land, and thus the ladies will not wear Hanfu but Manchu clothing, which is what we see today as traditional Chinese clothing, with the side fastening up here, which is just a straight cut garment, long sleeved with a little button fastening at the throat, high neck of course, and then pretty straight cut. Whereas in the Hanfu styles we saw sweeping sleeves and sweeping skirts and all of that. So quite different, but the embroidery on these dresses is just amazing. And you can find these Chinese dramas on YouTube and watch them with subtitles. And you can find all of these Chinese dramas on YouTube for free and watch them with subtitles. Now the next Chinese series, sorry about that, we're still on Chinese series here. So the next Chinese series that is great, both in terms of costume and in terms of the story as well, is called Ru Yi's Royal Love in the Palace. And this tells the story of the next emperor ascending to the throne, and he wants to marry his childhood sweetheart to make her the empress. Due to strings being pulled in the background, he is forced to take another woman as his main wife, and he instead has to take his love as second wife. And throughout the course of this series, his heart is with his concubine, but he is legally married to the empress. Eventually the empress dies, and after many difficulties his love ascends to the throne as empress. But their happiness is unfortunately short-lived, as the emperor soon takes fancy to another woman who schemes to destroy the empress and frame her. Now we're finally done with the list of Chinese dramas. We move on to the Renaissance age, and the first movie I would recommend to watch in this category is Ever After with Drew Barrymore, which follows the plot of a typical Cinderella story and is set in Renaissance Italy. Now obviously we have all the beautiful costumes with characters dressed in the Renaissance style that was popular in Florence, with the double and triple puffs and the undersleeves peeking through. And overall the costumes are just a dream for this one. But the second movie I have from the Renaissance period is also a Cinderella story. This is a Slavic production, so very different style to Ever After. One of the best things about this drama is the music. Whereas Ever After was set in warm landscapes, Three Wishes for Cinderella is set in a snowy winter landscape. So if you're looking for something to watch for Christmas, watch that. The costumes are not 100% accurate. I don't think these two are meant to be historical dramas, they are just fantasy stories set in a certain time period. Moving on to something more historically accurate and also more recent, we enter the Regency era. And obviously I have to mention Pride and Prejudice. And not just any version, but the 1995 BBC production, which is a miniseries. Costumes, very good. I think they nailed it. It's really well done. and it's just a lot more historically accurate than the Hollywood version from 2005. I feel like they captured the essence of this novel really well in the series, and if you haven't already seen it, I highly suggest you do now. Staying in the Regency period, a very well done drama, from a costume point of view, is the 2020 Emma. And these producers really took the costumes to the next level. Many pieces worn in the movie are based off of extant pieces from the time. And from a costume point of view, this movie is great. With Pride and Prejudice, which is based on Jane Austen's novel. Moving on to the Victorian era, let's start with North and South, which is a series that is based off Elizabeth Gaskell's novel North and South, telling a story of a gentlewoman from southern England who, due to some family misfortune, is transplanted up to the rough, industrialized north of England, where she lives in a dirtyish industrial mill town and meets the handsome and seemingly cruel owner of the mill, whom she later falls in love with. I'm not trying to reveal too much here. Altogether, this is a drama again, it's not a comedy. While Emma and Pride and Prejudice were very light-hearted, this deals a lot with the problems that people were facing in these industrial factories of the 19th century, and you see the poverty and the conditions in which the workers had to live. So this is a more grave drama, very dark, very melancholy in a sense, but in the end I guess it's more realistic. And we also get to see a little bit of the lives of the lower class, which is not so much the case in Pride and Prejudice and Emma. Moving on to the next drama. If you like Louisa May Alcott, you have to watch Little Women, and here I suggest the 1997, I think, version. So, for those of you who haven't heard of Little Women, set in 1860s United States during the Civil War era, and it just tells of the domestic life of 5 women, the mother and her 4 daughters, while the father is away at the front. He's actually a chaplain, so not a soldier, but he's still in danger, and we get to see the domestic life of the women left behind. So far I've only watched scenes from this movie, but I did like what I saw so far, but obviously I did read all 4 books from the Little Women series. I do know the story, and I did see some scenes from this movie, but I still have to get my hands on the DVD before I watch the entire thing. Staying in the 1860s, which is one of my favorite decades of the Victorian era, you have to watch Sissy. This is the story of Empress Elizabeth of Austria, affectionately known as Sissy. And this is a German production, so you might have to look for something with subtitles. And this is actually a trilogy, starting with how Sissy became Empress, and then the last 2 bits are of her life. The costumes, oh my gosh, guys, I love the costumes in this movie. They are pretty accurate, though since the movie was filmed in the 1950s or 60s, I do see certain things that look more 1950s, 1960s to me than 1860s. For instance, sometimes you see some of the skirts twirling up and you see that they're wearing decidedly 1950s high heels instead of the proper Victorian lace-up boots and things like that. So if you look closely, you can see some little details that remind of the era this movie was actually shot in. But overall, highly recommend. It's a dream costume-wise. I just love the overall mood of the movie as well. Jumping over a couple of decades, we come to another movie that is based off a Louisa May Alcott novel, The Inheritance. And I did look online. The movie is currently on YouTube. So it's the 1997 movie The Inheritance, which tells the story of a young governess living with a family as their servant, basically. It's another Cinderella story, really, who later finds out that she's actually supposed to inherit the fortune of her father. So this drama is set in the natural form era, which would mean between 1875 and 1883, and the costumes are quite decent and the story is nice as well. Staying in the second Bustle period, if you like the Bustle period, I recommend you checking out The Gilded Age by Julian Fellowes, who is also the author of Downton Abbey. We'll come to that in a second. But while taking creative and artistic liberties with the costumes, they are really on point, and though I've only seen certain scenes in trailers so far, this drama is certainly going on my list. It is set in 1880s New York, and is apparently all about the struggle between Old New York and the Nouveau Riche. An honorable mention and a little bit of an outsider in this list is Back to the Future, and I'm talking specifically about Back to the Future Part 3, where the time machine gets hit by lightning and Doc accidentally travels to 1885. But despite Doc being a very annoying character, comment if you agree, the historical part of this movie is very well done, and actually Back to the Future from a historical point of view looks very good. Maybe save for the 2015 part, which is a little bit strange. Yeah. But the 1950s and the 1880s look very realistic, and although not much is seen of the female fashions, which is what I'm mainly interested in these dramas, the one female character that is shown quite a lot, Clara Clayton, is clothed quite accurately in my opinion. And a little bit of trivia, she's wearing the second bustle period styles from 1885 onward, and in the ending scene when Doc and Clara come to 1985 in their new time machine, you can actually see that Clara Clayton is now dressed in a style of dress from the 1890s. I feel like this is a very nice touch on the costume designer's part to let us know that basically Doc had to work 10 years to build the next time machine with 1885 materials and tools. So you have Clara Clayton wearing the second bustle styles throughout the movie, and then in the ending scene you see her in a very nice 1890s walking suit with the puffed sleeves and all. Moving on to the Edwardian era, the one drama that you probably have to watch is Downton Abbey. And again, this is a series plus 2 full-length movies. So this drama spans the entire period from the sinking of the Titanic.
Isn't this terrible?
All the way up to, I think, 1930s. So quite a lot of ground to cover. The costumes are great, and it's just a perfect mixture of drama and comedy. Last but not least, we have another war drama, this time set in the Second World War. And this drama is in Spanish, but obviously you can watch it with subtitles. It's called El Tiempo Entre Costuras, and I use it for Spanish learning purposes, but it's basically the story of a young seamstress who runs away from Madrid to live in Tetuan in Morocco, and from there she gets involved in the war. And then finally she's recruited as a British spy and sent back to Madrid to open a dress shop there as a cover for her operations, which is to get close to a Portuguese merchant working with the Nazis. And the combination of fashion and spying is just perfect. So this is the list of my favorite historical dramas, some of which I haven't even watched, so go yell at me in the comments. And also let me know which ones you would add to this list or which ones you enjoyed the most. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.